Hi, I'm Dave Miller, and I'd like to welcome you to the fourth in a series of programs we've designed here at KMST called College Prep for You. Last year we ran about 12 or 13 programs. We're going to have about 16 this year. And these are going to cover all the processes and intricacies of this adventure, this journey that high school students and their families will be following this year. In earlier broadcasts, we've had a panel of admissions officers and students. We had a broad overview. We had one of our students interviewed with us, and we talked about her adventure so far. In this fourth installment, we're going to talk about all these sort of intricacies, the vagaries, the ins and outs of the financial aid and scholarship picture. This can sometimes be puzzling. It's probably more complicated than it should be, but we're going to look into it, and this is one of the things that I had to do, a pretty quick learning curve myself when my students came through this application process. If we have time at the end, we're going to try to look at the University of Colorado Boulder. Each one of these installments, when we have time, I'd like to inform parents and students of some of the different schools that are available to our students. In previous programs, we've looked at some of the UCs, some of the Cal States. We'd also like to look at some of the state schools out of California where our students go, Oregon, Boulder, Arizona, those sorts of things. Since there's a great deal of information I wanted to present today, we're going to do this in a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to move at a fairly fast and detailed pace. So if you miss something, that's okay. We have recorded these shows, and they go out to 25 different schools, the junior highs and the high schools all over Monterey County. We've also provided them in Vimeo format for some of our students and schools, but everybody can have access to these as long as you have access to the web. So we'll reaffirm that each time, and we invite you to join us as we look at all the aspects of the financial aid and scholarship situation in facing students with college today. First of all, I'd like to re-welcome you into this program. We're glad to have this normal following, and let me tell you a little bit about myself. I think I became a little bit of an expert on this when my own two children got involved in this. I had some good thoughts and some bad thoughts, and had a little bumpy journey, and so I think I profited a little bit from that. I had two students at one time. I had a senior and a freshman in college, and had some real hard learning when I dealt with the college admissions office. But I made it my business to learn all about these things just out of a self-interest, to take care of our own family affairs. And then I've helped a number of students who've been on their own. Their parents didn't have too much involvement in the college process or in the financial aid thing. So, and I've tried to keep current, and I also have an expert up in the Aptos area who sends me information each week, and we have them come down once a year to put on a financial aid workshop. So it can be a tricky, intricate process, but as long as you take some notes and pay attention, it's not too bad. We can get through it. Okay, some of the things that I wanted to talk about today are a philosophy of financial aid. What does it mean so that you understand on the other side of the desk where they're coming from, and they understand what your role as a parent is. We want to outline and define the costs of college and the rate of increase, and I wish that our paychecks and the economy was going as well as the rate of increase with colleges. It's in the 30-odd years since I've been in college, it's gone up many times more than the average cost of living. Years and years ago, college would cost $5,500. Now it costs $52,000. So it's a huge rate of increase. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how colleges will determine the student's need and the family's ability to pay. They're fairly professional, fairly scientific about this. There's lots of forms, lots of documents, but sometimes you can be in disagreement, and sometimes you can be in a quandary about what's actually happening here. Three basic documents that all families and students need to be aware of. One is called the FAFSA, and that's the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You're going to hear that term quite a bit in this process from your junior through your senior year. The CSS Profile, that's the College Scholarship Profile. That's a private organization, whereas the FAFSA comes from the government. That's free. The profile only applies to some of the schools, some of the very selective schools, some of the more expensive schools, some of the more elite schools, more selective, hard ones to get into. So most of you won't have to worry about the CSS Profile. So we'll talk about both of those, and then the third one is the GPA Verification form, and this is a third form, again, that doesn't apply to everyone. It applies to students probably on the lower socioeconomic scale of things where the family's income is going to give them a real break, and they might qualify for some money from the state of California to help them become good dues payers. Next, we're going to talk about the different types of aid. When people talk about aid and scholarships, they think that somebody's just out there giving you money. Well, usually they give you money or loans or jobs because they want you for a specific reason. So we're going to try to delineate these terms. Merit aid, grant aid, loan aid, aid in terms of a job, and the whole package, loan, grant, job, the whole thing in terms of athletic recruiting, and then of course the military component. And that's becoming more and more popular and also more and more of a solution to some of these high costs of education. We're going to talk about a sample award. These seniors will be getting their award letters along with their acceptances along about March and April, and along with those comes a sample award. And we have to, not a sample award, along comes with those their awards. And they'll come in with 6 or 7 acceptances, 6 or 7 letters, and they want a little bit of advice figuring those out and comparing those things so that they're really comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So we'll try to help you with a sample award to ferret out the meaning of that, and so you can make some sense out of it. And then I'm going to share with you some miscellaneous considerations, things that I've just run into over the years, and I've compiled them and put them in my notebooks, and I use them in my presentations and with my counseling with students and families. I think some things that maybe don't show up in books too often, but things that can help you in this process. And then lastly, the last few things, we'll talk about the legislation, both the federal and state legislation, some new rules that you have to be aware of, rules that can help you and end up getting you some more money if you take advantage of them. And then just some general common sense tips from people who've done this before, people who've gone down the road. And then we're going to review with some terms. And I'll also add some examples of some books that you can get out and buy over at Borders and so forth. Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is the philosophy of financial aid. And this might seem a little obvious, but these days it seems like we've gotten into a situation where parents and college offices are being contentious. They're becoming adversaries. The colleges want to protect and husband their resources, and the parents and the families hear about all these other stories of scholarships and aid and all these sweet deals, and they figured there is an entitlement to college. And that's something that needs to be clarified right off the bat. The colleges are not in the job of providing an education for your children or you as a student. They're in the job of creating the most wonderful institution that they can. Parents have to own, and families have to own, the responsibility to educate their children. They've got to plan from the very beginning to save money, to put money away, to develop talents, to do all that's necessary so that their students can have a good college experience. So having an accurate portrayal of the responsibility of who's got which obligations is a good starting point. There's a discussion about one's willingness to pay versus a person's ability to pay. I see in our school and in my job lots of students whose families are well off and they have the ability to pay, but they're a little less willing to pay because I don't care how much money a family has, how much a student is socked away. If one chooses to go to one of these very elite selective schools that cost $52,000, $54,000 a year, times 4 years, that's well over $250,000, and by the time the present sophomores, juniors, and seniors go through that freshman through senior year process, it's probably going to be a lot closer to $300,000 after all is said and done. And these are after-tax dollars. So $250,000 after taxes, $300,000 after taxes. It's pretty easy to see why some people are a little reticent to write those checks. But again, that sort of adds to some of the adversarial relationship that has developed. Okay, on the other side, the ball is in the other court. The colleges, if they're asking us to be upfront with them in terms of our resources, the money that we have, the money we're willing to part with, you have the right to expect them to be ethical in their dealings with you. And sometimes that occurs and sometimes does not occur. Okay, and the last thing is I want you to be aware of this term of fairness, because in each one of these programs, each one of these aspects of the college application process, it comes down to the bottom line is everybody being fair? Is the college being fair to me? Are other students being fair to your student? Is your student being fair to everybody else in this process. So sometimes things don't quite seem fair. Okay, it's best to be armed then with a little bit of knowledge and information. Okay, these are the frightening costs of college these days. These high-end private selective schools all over the country, not just back east. I gave a couple examples here. Lehigh's in Pennsylvania, Stanford out here on the coast, and Yale in New England. They're in the $52,000, $53,000, $54,000 range. George Washington University used to be the most expensive school. Sarah Lawrence was for a while. I don't know who has that dubious distinction these days, but it's sort of intimidating. And just as sort of off the cuff here, it seems like the people who sort of have this knocked, paying these high prices, are wealthy people, because that's a small portion of their resources and their income, and also poor people, because students who have lots of need and have lots of merit and can do the work of these places, there's a way for them to get money. The people who seem to get squeezed in between are the vast middle class of nurses, teachers, even doctors these days. A single one doctor is working, his wife stays at home. It can be pretty tough to come up with that money, especially if you have several kids. So it's a frightening prospect to think about that money. The second group tends to be the Catholic colleges, and these would be Santa Clara, USF, Fordham back east, certainly Georgetown, Villanova, probably 30 or 40 Catholic schools, and they try to keep the cost down a little bit. They're in that maybe $40,000 range. They're not quite up to the 50, because they've got this outreach philosophy, and they try to seek out minorities and all classes of people, and they also value service and volunteer work. So they're going for a certain type of person, and they also want to reward that and attract those sort of people. But again, they're private, and those can be very, very expensive. The school that we're going to maybe take a look at the end of the program, it's one of the state schools, and if you're in state in Boulder, Colorado, it can be pretty cheap, probably around the $20,000 mark or so, $20,000, $25,000, just like our state schools. But it's very popular. It's one of our top popular schools for our students at Stevenson. Our students do very well there. They like our out-of-state money, and they see themselves in a national posture. So more and more students are coming from all over the country to go to Boulder, and Arizona and Oregon and Hawaii, those schools in the Western Consortium. And those are pretty expensive schools, $33,000. And you have to ask yourself, is it worth my time to go out of state when I have the UCs and the Cal States here at home? Speaking of the UC system, we talked about that last time. And those are 9 wonderful schools, and we're lucky we have a great bargain. They're about $25,000 a year. And that seems, when I talk about it, it seems like a bargain. I know it sounds a great deal to most people out there, but it is a bargain relative to what you get. And the Cal State system, a little different purpose and a little cheaper, a little different clientele group of people, but about $20,000 to go to those schools. One hidden gem that I think people should consider, especially if money and an adventure and going abroad is a concern, are these Canadian schools. You can go to a school in Canada, the absolute best schools in Canada, what they would term the Canadian Ivies, for about the same as we can go to school in California. So we're talking about $18,000 room board, the whole enchilada here. And there are a number of wonderful Canadian schools. I visited in the West Coast, Northwest Coast in Canada this summer. I saw University of British Columbia, Simon Fraser, University of Victoria, just to name a few of the really good schools. In the past, I visited McGill and Concordia back east. I plan on visiting some schools around Toronto a little bit later in the year, because we have more and more students that are looking into that. They're very, very attractive in terms of the money, the locations. They're very exotic, and they're fairly cheap, and great education. A little bit bigger is the problem. And then the last strata of colleges that cost some money are the community colleges, the ones that we have around here, Hartnell, MPC, Cabrillo, and so forth. You can really go to those places for less than $5,000. You know, the tuition and fees are minimal. You obviously have to, you're staying at home, you're not boarding at those places. So you can get the first 2 years knocked out, and you get a wonderful education. MPC, I know personally, it's got some wonderful biology and English teachers, so it's a good way to go in terms of saving some money. Okay, why does it cost so much money? Why do these have these huge price tags on them? Well, basically, a campus, whether it's MPC or Harvard, it's like a small city. Lots of facilities, people, food, vehicles, security, construction, fire departments. They are like a city, and the president is more than a mayor. He's the mayor, certainly probably little larger responsibility than the mayor of some of these small towns in Alaska that we've been hearing about lately. But it's a huge administrative job, and what's making these things really expensive these days are the dorms are so fantastic, and the food, which are usually sublet out to special food agencies, Marriott Corporation, and so forth. They're trying to attract kids with good dorms, good food, and in the what's called the NESCAC schools up in New England, everybody's got this brand new natatorium, a swimming pool area that's really wonderful. A lot of schools have climbing walls, so all these things are very expensive, but they're intended to attract better and better students. So with that comes a price tag. The Cal States, UCs, community colleges, all are paid by you and me, the taxpayers in California. And we're right in the center of this controversy right now with the governor trying to decide what are going to be the cutbacks and what are going to be the charges next year. And we want to attract and keep our own people, so that's going to be at the heart of some of our future political discussions. And then thirdly here, these independent private schools, the colleges and universities all across the country, they're depending upon people writing checks, tuition, alumni, these huge endowments, and the donors to keep their doors open. And it seems like the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. In the last 10 years or so, we've seen any number of small, private, usually Protestant schools have gone out of business, and the all-male schools have gone out of business, whereas the Harvard and the Yale and the Princetons, these schools have upwards of 30 and 40 billions of dollars. Well, before the stock market crash, they had quite a bit of money. So they can pretty much do what they want to do, but the vast majority of these schools, 4,000 schools, have got to be concerned about how they're going to pay their bills. Now, the last point I want to make here about no matter how much it costs, this is a great investment. Over a lifetime, the gap between people who go to college and the people who just have a high school diploma is upwards of $1 million, and that's changing and growing all the time. That sources with the College Board itself. So both your standard of living, how you see yourself, and then the money you're going to make is certainly worth paying those extra dollars. Okay, what are we spending money for when we go to college? Obviously, it's tuition and fees. We're going to pay for those courses, the lab things, the sports fees, everything attendant upon going to college. That's the big chunk of the money. We have to live and eat and have medical care, those sorts of things. So room and board, obviously most people are living on campus. There are some commuter schools and the junior colleges are not usually going to be, students won't be living there, but most everybody's going to have a room and board fee. The books, the labs, all those things cost money. Travel, if you're going to school back east, you're flying into New York or Boston, you're paying those high airline fares, that's going to be pretty expensive for you. If you're just driving to Northern California, not quite as much. Social expenses, that could be your fraternity, could be a sorority, you might be on the ski team, you might go on a traveling lacrosse group and you play lacrosse in the UK during a spring break, that's going to cost some money. And then if you have any special needs, any special learning, any special physical differences, things that just apply to you, maybe some medical expenses, some drugs, things like that, and you have to put those into your budget. Now, costs are going to vary from place to place. Certainly the public schools and the private schools, this is a growing gap. It used to be that students could choose private school or public school, and the loans, the jobs, the endowment of the school would make up the difference, but I no longer tell people that. I tell them if you choose to go to private school, it might cost you a little bit more money, and you're going to have to think through and have a family discussion about whether this is worth it to you or not. Certainly the UC system is a little more expensive than the Cal State system, a little different product, a little different experience, those 9 UCs versus the 23 public schools, or Cal States. Then the public in-state versus public out-of-state. You know, our UCs and our Cal States, you're going to be 25,000 or less. Do you want to get a similar experience by going to Oregon or Arizona, other states? Certainly living at home is going to cost a lot less than boarding, but then you give up quite a bit of the experience. And if you choose a prestige choice over a scholarship choice, that can be very, very expensive. Let me explain that for a second. Lots and lots of schools, students who could get in anywhere. The kids who apply and qualify for the Colgates and the Lehighs and Rice and Vanderbilt, these wonderful expensive schools, usually those schools, you don't get awards because of how wonderful you are, because most of the students are pretty wonderful there, and who would they give them to? They have to give money to everyone. So one of the ways that I advise students and families to save a little bit of money, if you have these wonderful scores and wonderful attributes, you know, you're an athlete, you're a leader, whatever, You can take that and trot down to a tier just below those brand name schools, and they want you. They're going to buy your merit. They're going to buy your scores, your class rank, your GPA, your leadership, the fact that you're an Eagle Scout, so that they can move up the food chain. So it's a thing to think about. Give up a little bit of prestige so that you can have a little bit more money for your family. Okay, some other options you need to consider. Lots of schools in Canada. It's pretty close. It's like being in the country, but it's also like being overseas. The UK, I've spent a couple of weeks visiting over there, all over the UK, in London, up and down all of their places in Great Britain, in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, Wales. Wonderful options over there. They tend to be big. They're obviously public. They don't speak American English. Got a little different approach to education. Ireland, both the country and then the portion that's part of the UK, have wonderful campuses. And then Australia. In fact, my daughter spent a graduate year in Australia. I just had a breakfast with a group from Australia and New Zealand, and they were obviously pitching their wares and trying to get American students to come over. But Australia and New Zealand are wonderful, wonderful choices, if not just for a year, then for the full 4 years themselves. Okay, how does the school determine how much money you should pay? Well, they've got the difficult job of ferreting out the financial strength of the family. In other words, how much can you pay? They depend upon your honesty, just like you depend upon their integrity, and they're going to ask a series of questions to find out, to plumb the depths, to find out honestly how much can you pay to make it hurt, but you'll come just short of deciding not to come because it's too expensive and hurts too much. Okay, so they're going to look at, they're going to determine financial aid. It's a little formula here. Financial aid is the money that you get to come to their school. And it equals the cost of the school, the overall cost, whether that's 52 or 44 or 33, minus the estimated family contribution, EFC. And you'll see that on the FAFSA, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Okay, a bunch of variables here. How much your family makes, how much capital do you possess, if you have a home or two homes or some rentals, what are your investments, how much debt do you have, how close are you to retirement, what are your savings, do you have a trust? All of these things are taken into account in their formula. If you're divorced, a lot of schools treat that a little bit differently. Some will favor a divorce and only go after the one custodial parent. Some schools will go after both parents, and they will go after both in-laws. Like they'll have 4 people to go after. That's sort of unfair, it seems to me. How close you are to retirement, if you have a huge family versus one. Also, if you hire what I would consider a sharp accountant, and I've met several of these sharp accountants with families that we've dealt with, and they sharpen this pencil and somehow they come up with some amazing figures that parents and families who have the ability to pay don't have to pay quite as much because this guy knows the angles and he maybe has a little different set of ethics. So, and again, I'm telling you this just to warn you how the game is played out there, and everybody may not be as ethical and as upfront and honest as you would like to believe they are, and certainly not maybe as honest as you are. So the missions, the financial aid people are constantly trying to fight these things and find out the truth of what everybody's ability to pay is. And it's up to the discretion of each institution. They all have their own sets of rules and regulations. They all go about it a different way. And you can have the same application at 3 or 4 different places, and you'll come up with a variety of different figures that you have to deal with. So. Another thing to keep in mind while you're going through this is you have to anticipate not just this first year, your freshman year. You have to anticipate all 4 years, what your need is over 4 years. And if you know that you're going to be retired 2 years after your son or daughter starts, or if something comes up and you lose a job, or something horrific happens to your family, or the roof blows off of your house, there are ways that these offices take these into account. Obviously, if you win the lottery, you should probably march into the office and tell them, hey, I'm rich, I don't need this loan anymore. They're going to expect that, just like if you have a catastrophe in your family and you need more money, there's some lines on the FAFSA and on the profile where you can go in and you can go in and talk to them, and hopefully they'll be fair with you. Okay, when I say there's no uniformity these days, I used to know about the Ivy League because they met in New York City in the spring to make sure that no Ivy League school could attract a student, like a Dartmouth student wouldn't go to Dartmouth because they get a better deal than the Columbia offer that he got. Because they wanted students and families to make decisions based on the institution, not based on the money, because they don't give merit aid to any of their students. That was changed several years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, by the U.S. government, who thought that this was sort of a violation of Sherman antitrust or some collusion or some monopoly. So they no longer check to see what each of these awards is. And what that has done is opened up a can of worms so that the Ivy League, as well as many other colleges, can do pretty much what they want to do. And they can do what's called preferential packaging. They can offer much more money to one family and one student that they really want, whereas another institution that maybe doesn't want that student quite as much will not make quite as an attractive offer. So when you compare these two offers, they seem to be a little bit out of sync, and that's where you maybe need the advice of, of a professional, a counselor, a college guidance person, an accountant, and so forth. Okay, the FAFSA. This is the main document that you need to be aware of. It's called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It's free, it's online, it's pretty easy to do, and everyone has to do these. Everyone should do this. Important dates are, you cannot fill this out and send it in before January 1st. If you do, they will send it back to you. And if you send it past March 2nd, you're too late. So there's this window between January 1st and March 2nd. You can work on it before January 1st, but you just can't send it in before then. Okay, any aid whatsoever from the government, from the state, a lot of times from merit awards, from local groups, they want to see that you filled out the FAFSA. It's pretty simple. It's a little intrusive. Some people don't want to give up private information, but it does require that you show your W-2 forms, that's the salary you made every year, and your 1040s. That's the document you send to the government, the IRS, for your taxes each year. They want that both from the parents and from the students. Okay, after you fill this out and send it in, about 4 or 5 weeks later, they will send back a form to you called the Student Aid Report, the SAR. And basically, it's all the information that you have provided them with, so you can double check it. And as you double check it, if there's a mistake, and hopefully there won't be, you can rectify that mistake. But the way you check it is by sending in the correction to every school that you applied to. So the good thing is, if you fill out the FAFSA and tell the schools where you want it to go, it goes all at once. If you make a mistake, you've got to contact each school, and I know that from my own experience. You can do this paper, but mainly most people are taking it online. They would rather do it that way. It's automatically renewable, so once you go through the pain of doing the FAFSA for your student going into the freshman year, automatically that SAR, the Student Aid Report, will come back to you just for minor adjustments each year, and you'll have to readjust the categories and the X's and O's and the dollars that you have every year. This is what the FAFSA site looks like if you Google that. And it's pretty simple, it's pretty user-friendly. It doesn't take long, just a series of questions you have to answer. So you won't have to spend a great deal of time. Now, the second document is the CSS Profile, the College Scholarship Profile. That's usually with private schools, selective schools, the more high-end schools. And they're also affiliated with the College Board and the Educational Testing Service, so they're in it to make some money. You have to pay for it, it's not free, and it costs just $9, but for each school you send it to, it's going to cost you $16 more. So if you apply to 10 schools that require this, that's $169. Okay, it is customized. You do the online application, then they send you either paper or an online response. You add specific details, a little different than the other forms, but basically all the information has to align. In the past, they've counted your home a little bit more. I think they've drawn back on that so it doesn't prejudice California homeowners, but they want to know a little bit more about your resources than the FAFSA asks for. It's private, it's used by selective schools, and it's also used in conjunction with their own institutional form or document. So they will look at three things: the FAFSA, the profile, and then their own little forms that they use. Again, there's a spot on this profile for you to explain any unusual circumstances with your family, any catastrophes, any vicissitudes, any ups or downs in your family circumstances. And this due date, you can be working on this now, and you can turn it in before the FAFSA. Just make sure that you have all the information accurate. And people say, well, what about I don't have my dividends, I don't have my interest, I don't have my bank statements, I don't have my W-2s and 1040s. No problem. You just make a guesstimate based on last year. You don't dummy in the numbers, but you sort of take a real good guesstimate of the numbers, send those in, and they will get that document back to you in the summertime, usually by July, and they'll adjust that. Might be a little more, a little less, but trust them, they're going to do, I think, a pretty honest job with that. Okay, after the profile, a couple other documents you have to deal with here. Oh, I want to show a picture of the profile. There it is. If you go to the College Board site, it's a wonderful site. They do lots of things. This is where they give you the information on completing the profile. Okay, the third major document you have to deal with is called the GPA Verification Form. This comes from California Ed Fund, and it is a way for you to prove what your GPA is and send it into the state, and if you qualify, they'll give you some money. And the goal is to have California students go to state schools, stay within state, and become good taxpayers. Okay, you have to have basically a 3.3 GPA. That's not too tough. And you need to do this for all California grants. There's a variety of them. There's some for grad school, there's some for teaching programs, certainly some for undergraduate school. What you need to do is go and see your counselor and your registrar at school. Have them fill out, you fill out the form, you give them the information, they will send it in. And again, this is due by March 2nd, so make sure that you don't get late past that. I've had some families in the past that were a little bit late and they're just out of business. You know, you just can't deal with the state or the federal government in terms of getting your will here. So make sure you take advantage of that time frame. And you obviously have to have done the FAFSA to do the GPA verification form. And this is what you're going to get, $3,000 towards the Cal State or the UC tuition, and $9,000 if you go to a private school in California. That could be a St. Mary's, USF, a Stanford, a Santa Clara, and so forth. And again, this is automatically renewable as long as you keep your grade point average up. And I sort of cut this from the site, but the document will look something like this. And then the site itself is the California government, California Student Aid Commission. Lots of good things on this site as well. Okay, important dates to keep in mind. January 1st, that's the date that's coming up. That's when you can turn in the FAFSA. It's also the due date for most private selective schools. That's a big day. First date to file. March 1st, that's usually when people will find out about, start to find out when they're getting into some colleges, but that's the deadline also for the Cal Grant and the FAFSA. And then May 1st, that is usually when you have to decide when you're going to school, and that's also the priority notification date for these financial sources. So those are big things to keep in mind. Okay, types of aid. When we say aid, what are we talking about? We're talking about gift, work, and loan. People just give you things, they put you to work and pay you, and then they just loan you and expect to be paid back. Okay, what's a gift or a grant? It's free, you don't have to pay it back. Some gifts you may have heard of, the Cal Grant we just talked about. A Pell Grant, that comes from the State Ed Fund as well. And that is usually for people who are a little more dire straits here. They've got a little less family income. Another one like that is this the Student Equal Opportunity Grant. And again, you have to be a little more lower income. They each have their own stipulation, but just by doing the GPA verification form and filing for the financial aid with each college, you'll find out if they will help you determine whether you qualify for those things. Okay, the next one is college merit. This is based on you having something that they want, and we're going to go through a list of those here in a second. Another source of gifts or grants, organizational scholarships. Now those could be from B'nai B'rith, they could be from the Catholic groups, Irish foundations. My daughter applied to one because our family's Welsh on one side. Could be Veterans of Foreign Wars. Just any sorts of groups, local scholarships, any organizations, they're just dying to give away money, and they raise funds. It makes them feel good, it's good for the community, and they try to help kids get into school. Churches have this, a variety of churches. We had a church-related insurance when I was growing up. I was a Lutheran, and we had Lutheran Brotherhood, and I continued that as an adult. And lo and behold, my Lutheran Brotherhood guy said, "Geez, when your kids become of age, come and talk to me about scholarships." And so they competed against some students in just Santa Cruz and Monterey, and there weren't too many people graduating that had Lutheran Brotherhood insurance. So we qualified. So lots of different sources out there. Okay, what are some examples of scholarships that colleges seek out, and they will reward you? In other words, they will buy these attributes. Certainly athletics. If you're good enough athlete, people are going to recruit you and want to help you with aid. Leadership, leadership both in sports, student council, a variety of means. Certainly minority status, where you're not represented. For example, Hispanics are all over the West, but if you are an Hispanic student and you go to the Midwest, you have a much better chance of getting a scholarship. So that can help. Theater, the arts, certainly some majors. I know that geology is not a very popular science major, so The geology professors want to attract students there, so sometimes there'll be some scholarships just for the major. Certainly for gender, women have an advantage some places, males have an advantage other places. Certainly art students, music scholarships, service, religious beliefs, scouting, all sorts of ways that merit can be rewarded. Family background, this is pretty interesting. Let me go back to that one for family background. My kids had a grandfather who served in World War II, and there's a group in Carmel and Monterey and Carmel Valley that has a scholarship if your grandparents were in World War II. So you can imagine that's a pretty small number these days. So you want to try to go after these scholarships where you're not bumping into lots of heads, a lot of different bodies here. And also you want to find out if financial need is attached to some of these. Okay, the next one besides a grant is a loan. The student borrows money, usually through the federal Stafford Loan Association. Then you are expected to pay it back either after your graduation, within 6 months after your graduation, or in some cases within 60 days of getting the loan, depending on whether you qualify as being subsidized or not. But then you have to pay it back. The parents also have a variety of loans. The PLUS loan is one that you get through the schools. Those are both pretty good rates of interest, but you've got to pay those things back. The Stafford loan is used to be what was called the NDEA, National Defense Education Act loan, and everybody in the United States who is alive and going to college can apply for the Stafford loan. So it's for every student, and I call this a no-brainer. If you are subsidized, that means the government will pay your interest while you have the loan, and you have to qualify for this. It's only a 6% rate. If you're unsubsidized, that means you don't qualify as a family to get financial aid, but you still can get this loan, and it's the best loan you're ever going to get. It's 6.8%. A dependent, that means most kids who have parents, they can borrow up to $31,000 for the 4-year experience. And that's up from about $15,000 or $18,000 a couple of years ago. Now it's up to $31,000. And that comes in increments of about $3,500 the first year, and then about $5,000, then about $7,000 the last 2 years. And then you can also borrow more money, but it'll just be unsubsidized. Okay, so you'll pay a higher rent on that money. So if you're a dependent student, you can get $31,000. If you're an independent student, that means you're on your own. You don't have anybody looking out for you. You can borrow up to $57,500 over the 4 years. So for anybody, I think this is a no-brainer. It's cheap money, and here's the important part that I tell our parents, even parents who can afford to pay. You want to get this Stafford loan, even if you pay the loan off within 60 days, you have to start paying if you don't qualify, but you get the loan, you process the money, and you create credit. That's the key thing, the important thing. So your student, when he graduates or she graduates after 4 years, they've established credit, and when they buy their first car, get their first important loan, buy a house, they're getting a much better credit rating and a better rate on the loan. Okay, third thing is work. Federal and state work. It's available on every campus. It's really easy to get a job, whether you're slinging hamburger, delivering pizzas. I remember my wife worked at the Naval Postgraduate Station. I worked as a waiter in Commons. So you can work on campus and off campus, usually through approved sites. Sometimes you just want to work on your own. If you have a job through the school, they're going to limit that to maybe 10 hours a week. And they will either give you the paycheck or the pay will go right to your fees. So you can just sign that over, depending on what's better for your taxes. Okay, some examples of some aid here. Obviously, the loans we talked about, the PLUS loan, there's a direct loan, the Stafford loan, a Perkins loan, and they are either subsidized, which means you qualify, or unsubsidized, you don't qualify. Some grants are the Pell Grant, the Cal Grant, the Federal Student Economic Opportunity Grant, work-study, jobs on campus, off campus, during the summer, during the school year. The best ones, I think, are research-related. Like my wife was a biologist. She worked as a TA in high school and had a wonderful teacher, mentor, and she then wanted to study biology in college. She happened to work and get a job on campus, part of her scholarship, working with the head of the biology department there. Graduated in a couple, 3 years, went to grad school early, and became a biology teacher, AP biology teacher. Right now she's a Hopkins Marine Station person. She's in Dave Eppel's lab. So her whole life has been determined by those first couple jobs she got related to her interests, which is science and biology, and it helped her go through college. One of my best friends in high school had a wonderful job. He went to Little Geneva College in my hometown. He was a recruited athlete, but as a Division III school, and actually was an NAIA school at the time. They couldn't really give true scholarships, so they funneled money to their athletes in sort of strange ways. And his job was to keep the elephants out of the gym, and he did just a wonderful job. We never saw, in the whole 4 years he was there, we never saw an elephant, but he got his paycheck every month, and it helped him go to school. And it kept the little town free of elephants, as a matter of fact, as well. Merit aid, lots of examples here. I talked about those before, athletics, music, and so forth. Now, athletic scholarships. This is the thing where you hear on TV, you watch the football games on the weekend. All of those guys, there's 85 of them on each team, a Division I team playing football. They're on full scholarship. They get grant, loan, room, board, job, the whole deal. 1AA, that's a little subset. They are still getting recruited. They're getting money. They're about 75 on those teams. And then Division II also gets a little bit of money. National, and this isn't just football. This is all across the board. There are 20, 25 odd different sports, and somebody is going to pay for those athletes to come on their campuses, and it could be you. Okay, national merit, that's funded by a national group based on your PSAT scores. It's only $1,500, sometimes $2,000, but it's still, you know, a dollar here, dollar over there. Suddenly you have some real money. The ROTC, that's the Reserve Officer Training Corps. That's with the Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force. If you want to give a commitment to serve in our nation's military, they'll pick up the tab, and they'll do it partially, they'll do the full thing. There's a whole variety of different little configurations that they have. You don't have to go to West Point or Annapolis. You can do it by going to the college that you want, taking certain courses, giving up portions of your summer, but it's going to pay the tab. The last thing, or this is probably the best source for most people, local, regional, and national scholarships. The local ones could be this Carmel Valley B'nai B'rith Award, that you have to be Jewish, you have to live out in Carmel Valley, only those people can apply. Local Catholic, Italian Catholic groups, they want to see Italian Catholic kids, so that's a narrow group. I told you my kids had this Lutheran Brotherhood. Those are all local, small, high incidence of success for those things. Regional ones, those could be in the area. Let me just give you an example of a regional one. I was in Mervyn shopping when my daughter was in high school. They saw on the board this Mervyn's Female Athlete Scholarship. We give out 900 of them around this area. I thought, geez, pretty good odds here. So we applied for one late in August. We got a check for $500, I think it was. So that's an example of a regional one. Still pretty good odds there. National scholarships, Toyota scholarships, Coca-Cola, Drink Milk, all these ones that you see on the websites. Somebody wins them, but I'm not quite sure who. They're very, very difficult. They're tough, very competitive. You might spend your time doing other things. The sample award, let's say that it costs you $44,000 to go to Santa Clara. The EFC, the estimated family contribution, is $28,000. So that means you are left with a need of $16,000. You're short that amount of money. Okay, what are they going to do for you? Well, they're going to give you a grant of $8,000. Could be a little more, could be a little less. They're going to give you a job, a work-study job of $3,000. They're going to give your parents a loan of $3,000. That doesn't seem like it's a scholarship. That's sort of unfair. And they'll give a student loan of $2,000. So you add those up, and I think that should be $16,000. So you need $16,000. They make it happen. Okay, some miscellaneous considerations. Let me go back to that. One of the things you want to make sure is that you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Like I've had students come in and they're going to show me their paperwork, and they have everybody, like one group will say you need 22,000, another group will say you need 18,000. And so you obviously think, well, I'll go to the one that's going to give me the most money. Well, you have to find out the real money that they're going to give to you. Like, look to see what the grant is, not what the whole package is. Because that package could be sort of buttered up with lots of loan, lots of grant, lots of job, lots of things for your parents. You want to look out and compare the grants, things you're not going to have to pay back. And so you might need some help with that. Okay, some miscellaneous things you need to be aware of. Dealing with the financial aid office. Okay, you need to be nice to them so that they're nice to you. You want to try to avoid this sort of adversarial relationship with them. You get along well with them because they're the ones going to be determining your fate. So you can drive up, you can see them if it's easy, talk things over, but be rational and have your facts. Okay, gapping is another term you need to be aware of. Okay, you might need $40,000 to go to a school, and they say that we can only give you qualify for 30, but we can only give you 20 instead of 30. So they've gapped you $10,000. That means they really don't want you that bad, but they're going to accept you. But it's sort of a way of not accepting you with that gap. And some schools will do that, and I think it's sort of unethical, but they do it because they don't have quite enough money. The schools you want to apply to and think about are the schools that are need blind. Okay, they accept you without your need, and then they have an ability to pay whatever your need is. Not too many schools are that way. Okay, financial needs sometimes then affects admissions. I remember a few years ago, Brown University used to accept their first 4/5 of their class, totally need blind, but then the last part of the class, they would look at how much it was going to cost them to accept you. They no longer have to do that because Brown's got lots of money, but the vast majority of schools are need sensitive, need aware, but they're not need blind. In other words, they take into consideration how much it's going to cost them to take you. And if you are compared with another person, that other person can write a check and you're going to consume some of their dollars. Down when they figure out the last part of the class, they're going to take those people who can pay the full fare. It doesn't sound fair, but that's what they have to do. Okay, preferential packaging is another thing you need to be aware of. This is where they want you rather than somebody else, so they're going to give you a little more grant than loan or job. This is where they get their soccer players, the female soccer player that gets in. You're just as qualified as she is, but she gets a different package because you can't play on the women's soccer team and she can. Again, sometimes things might not be fair, but that's how they operate these things. Also, early decision and has a great deal of impact on financial aid. If you go early, you're sort of stuck with the package they offer you. You can't compare it to other ones. You can't say, hey, wait a minute. You can say, I can't go here, but then you're just left. You haven't applied to other places, and you're sort of out in the limb. You have to wait for another year. So if you apply early, you need to be aware of that predicament you might find yourself in. Okay, a couple other things you need to be aware of. There are some internet estimators. FinAid has one, College Board has one, a variety of other schools. You can pump in your information and find out what all you're going to have to pay. Independent status. We talked about that before. What does it take to be an independent person? Like a lot of parents will say, well, geez, I'll just cut my son or daughter loose and they can qualify for all sorts of money. Well, it doesn't work that way. To be an independent student, you've got to be 25 years or older, and that doesn't apply to most people applying to be freshmen. Another way is to be in graduate school, and obviously you can't jump to graduate school without going to college. A real legitimate way is to be an orphan or ward of the court, and we have a couple of those at Stevenson every year that we sort of look after, and those students are independent students and they get pretty good packages. If you're married, you're considered independent because they know it's tough to be married and have a job and go to college, or if you have children, legal dependents. Again, these are pretty tough obstacles here, including this one being military veteran. So this is not very attractive, all these 6 characteristics just to be independent. Okay, merit aid sources. Where can I go to get some of this aid? We give lots of handouts. Your school probably has a handout. You can go in and ask for it in the school or guidance office. Private school examples, every school you apply to has some hidden merit aid sources. For example, Boston University, every year they send us this engineer award thing. Colby College has the Ralph Bunche Scholarship to attract minority students, both minority males and females, Hispanic, black students, Native Americans, so forth. So look at the schools you're applying to and see what they have available for you. The UC Regents, just by applying to the UC system, you automatically qualify, you don't qualify, but you're automatically in the running for lots of scholarships that they have in the UC system. I mentioned in our last program that there are winemaking scholarships at Davis. There's a scholarship I know at Davis for Monterey County residents. Some schools have a variety of different stipulations for the UC Regent scholarships. Community agencies, the Elks Club, the Rotary Club, American Legion, the VFW, different religious groups. Just beat the bushes and find out what is out there in your local community, and you're going to end up spending more time on scholarships than you will on applications if you really do a good job at it and are really conscientious. Some specialty examples, I'll give you one. There's a Hal Connolly State Disabled Athlete Award, and you have to find out about that. It's it's through Sacramento. It's these ones that are sort of little hidden gems, but you're not going to be applying and competing with too many people. The internet's got tons and tons of sites. The 3 best ones are FastWeb, FinAid, and then School Soup. And then the 4th one I just found recently is called Merit Aid. So all you have to do is Google these things and they'll pop up. And this is the site for the one that I rely on the most. They give me lots of information. They send little handouts to my students. I cut and paste these things. They help you with the college application process as well. So they provide lots of answers for you. They give you lists of individual scholarships and lots of application advice. And all you have to do is answer about a half hour's worth of questions, and they just keep firing these sources to you. FinAid is another one. You can Google this. It's linked to FastWeb. And It's just lots and lots of information. It does include a calculator, so if you haven't found one on another source, you can get one on this site, and just lots of miscellaneous financial advice. You can get lost in the site and find out lots of things here. Then the third one is the part of the College Board itself. It's where the CSS Profile was. They have links to scholarship searches and sites, so those three I think are the best that I've found. Okay, some other financial aid sources, banks. Just walk into a bank, the ones that are open these days, and ask around and see what they can do. Your community library, believe it or not, it's got lots of help in there. Investment companies, different advisors your parents might have themselves, the UC Systems site, and then this FAFSA FinAid and the College Board itself. So lots of internet links, lots of sites we put up for our students here. Okay, some recent things you need to be aware of in terms of legislation that can help you with money, save some money. The Hope Scholarship is a lifetime allowance, the Scholarship Share Trust, the Coverdell Education Savings Account, and then some Ivy changes I want to talk about, and the last one, the 529 plans. Okay, the Hope Scholarship, and I'm not an expert on these, so I want to be a little hesitant to give you too much advice. I just want you to be aware of them. It's basically, you can save $1,500 off of your taxes for the first 2 years of college. In other words, you have to be a freshman or sophomore. You have to read, get an accountant, read the law, find out how to qualify. But it's called it's sort of like the lifetime learning credit. Lifetime learning credit is a little different formula. They take 20% of your first $10,000 in expenses, and this is for the sophomore and junior year. So you use the Hope credit the first 2 years. You can use the lifetime learning credit for the next 2 years. So 20% of $10,000 is $5,000. Anybody can use it. And recently, just a couple years ago, it was increased to $10,000, so you might want to look at that one. The Coverdell used to be a much more popular one. It's a savings account. It replaces the education IRA, and a good thing about an IRA is your money grows tax-free. Parents can put in, and family can put in up to $2,000 per child per year. And the good thing is, like a Roth, the earnings become tax-free. So you invest taxed dollars, and you don't have to pay extra money when you cash those in. It can be used for all levels of education: grad school, law school, business school, undergraduate, so forth. Now, the bad thing is that if you're making over $190,000, $220,000, it's phased out, and again, that doesn't apply to most of our viewers here. The California Scholar Share Trust, no income limits. The earnings are tax deferred. You're going to have to eventually pay them, but usually if you put those in the kids' names, they're paid at the student's rate. And this is again used for education. You can change the beneficiary. So all of these are similar, but they all have little subtle nuances, but they offer tax benefits. The best one is this 529 plan, and this is what I wish was available for my family, my kids. You invest money as early as you can. Anybody can do it. We just set up one for our granddaughter, put $1,000 in, and hopefully by the time she's ready for college, it's going to have grown, and people will not pay taxes on it. Anybody can do it for any schooling, no limits. You can put tons of money, more than $1,000. You can put $12,000 per year times 2 donors. That's $24,000 a year. Or you can do it 5 years worth of giving all at once, and there's some stipulations there, but you can sock away $120,000. And the good thing is you retain control, and so you can give yourself a little sense of satisfaction here and security. And this is going to end next couple of years in 2011, but I suspect that Congress is going to reenact that because it's such a good way to get people going to college. Okay, be aware of a couple of things. There's some scholarship scams. You never, ever, ever pay to help somebody find a scholarship, and you have to be very, very wary of some of these athletic recruiters who guarantee that they can give you a scholarship. So basically, don't pay for help. Go to your local coaches, go to your college counselor. And there's especially somebody locally that does this and has gotten a really bad education, so have your ears out. A couple of scholarship sources here. I've talked about these FinAid, FastWeb, soup.com, MeritAid, the College Board, California Ed Fund, lots of these. Specific tips, just some miscellaneous things to keep aware of. Apply to the lower tier schools to receive more merit money. You've got to own this process. Be proactive, don't wait for somebody to help you. Pay attention to the calendar and the dates. Be organized. Have a filing system. Beware of the early application. It may be for you. It could get you into college. It could help you save money, but it also could cost you some money. International students have a much harder time getting financial aid. Keep that in mind. The deferred list, if you really want to go to St. Mary's but they don't accept you immediately, they put you on a wait list. Sometimes that wait list can be disastrous in terms of financial aid because they run out of money. It gets all taken and then you have to wait for the next year. Also be very, very wary of some of these financial aid stats. Like a lot of people will say there's 60-70% of our students are on financial aid. Well, that means that they're getting loans or they got a job, but they're really not giving them money. So you have to really find out how many people are getting grant aid. Okay. Oh, one last thing, that one's a really important. Merit scholarships, if you get them from a local organization, make sure that they go in your name. Otherwise, that might decrease the scholarship that you're getting, financial aid you're getting from the school. Okay, a couple more tips quickly. Certify all the mailings, keep copies of everything. Consider AP classes. The more AP classes you have, the better chance you have to save a year's worth of tuition. You know, you get 7, 8, 9 AP scores that qualify and you're entered as a sophomore. That could be a good deal for you. So you can also consider graduating early. I don't think that's a good idea, but some kids do just to save the money. A real good money saver is going to a JC for 2 years and you're saving huge tuitions. And you can oftentimes get a superior education that way. Also consider some jobs that will forgive loans. We're talking nursing jobs, teaching jobs, social welfare jobs, things like that. And then of course you want to apply to some financial safety schools. Okay, we've talked about these terms, the FAFSA, the SAR, the profile, just a little review here. Institutional form, the estimated family contribution, financial need versus merit aid, self-help, subsidized loans. A variety of these terms you need to be aware of. Gapping, preferential packaging, grants and gifts, independent students, dependent students, and so forth. Okay, a couple of books real quickly. Just go to Borders, shop around. You'll see books like this. Buy a couple scholarship books, how to do books, financial aid. Get a hold of somebody who's gone through it and do the best job you can. Okay, as we come to a close on another of our series of workshops for you, I want to thank you for your kind attention and participating. We feel good about providing this service for the community. We have probably about 13 of these yet to do. In December we will have one. It will deal with 2 parts. It'll deal with getting good recommendations and also the interview, 2 important parts of this application process. I'd like to close by thanking both the students and the parents who've taken part today. I invite you to come in and see us the next time. This will rotate in the next couple of weeks. And I want to close with my mantra, which is it's never too early to start thinking about college, and it's never too late to get started. So here's wishing you well on your hunt and your search for the right college for you. Have a good day.